All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my much belated 1,000 subscriber video. For those of you who don't know, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I put out a survey asking for people to submit a deck they wanted me to talk about. And the crowd favorite submission of the following vote was my favorite deck of all time. It's really hard to define what my favorite deck of all time is. So I think what I'm going to talk about is one of the decks I won't stop talking about a lot, and hopefully this gives people some context and gives people some view as to what I'm going to call healthy Netrunner combo can look like, and the dragon I've been chasing ever since this deck rotated. We're going to flash back to 2019. This is in December 2019, after Pincel has just won the first Null Signal Games Worlds in Rotterdam. Playing Asa and Freedom. At the time, we had Downfall, but not Uprising, but we did have the Uprising booster pack, which had one card for every faction, just like the recent Midnight Sun booster pack had. The deck Pincel was playing did not want to use any of those booster cards, because they don't really fit well in the deck. But there was a card that I thought really belonged in that deck that Pincel did not have. And so I then went to an event, made top 8, scrubbed out, and then said, I've built a better deck than Pincel. Up to the viewer to decide if I actually have, but it was a deck that I really spent a lot of time iterating on and had a lot of fun with, and so I thought it's one of the decks I then chased and kept playing for multiple years as more and more pieces were rotated or banned out of the deck. And it still actually did pretty well for me in several events, so there was a lot of power in this deck. This deck was built around more or less 2 cards: Reconstruction Contract and Dedication Ceremony. These 2 cards basically allowed you to score agendas, paying much fewer credits and much more quickly than normally could. So this is a standard, what is often called a fast advance strategy, where the agenda is never on the table installed when the runner has a chance to steal it. And so the core combo of this deck was install your Reconstruction Contract, play 2 Dedication Ceremonies, and then score any agenda you'd like, because it would get 6 advancement counters. What you needed to do to make that work was some way to gain a click in that combo so that you could get your agenda on the table, or as we'll actually see, the easier thing to do was to get the Reconstruction Contract on the combo clicklessly, or on the table clicklessly. The original deck that Pincel was running was using 2x Biotic Labors to do this, and then just kind of playing this tempo game. It was also using this card called Efficiency Committee to help gain some extra clicks, along with G's model Bioroids. And so between this suite of cards, you were able to make you had a bunch of different potential lines where you could do some combinations to go and score out lots of agendas. Another key part of this combo is the agenda that's still legal in Standard, Project Vitruvius, because you'll note if you can get 6 counters on Vitruvius, you get 3 cards back. So if you spend a 3-card combo to go and score your Vitruvius, you can pull that whole 3-card combo back from archives and do it all over again. And so there are lines with this deck where you could score out 5 points in a single turn. This deck basically evolved from an older Eternal deck that could build, or not older Eternal deck, an old Standard deck that was trying to score all 7 points in one turn. And that was basically slowly banned out of existence. And this deck ultimately would end up rotating out of existence, I think, before it could go too far. But this deck was a ton of fun, and it took me, someone who was playing in a small meta, trying to get competitive, but still not doing much, and arguably still haven't done much. Maybe I shouldn't say that much. I did do well this year in one event. But the thing that Pincel was not playing in his deck was the card Red Level Clearance, which I had put in on the first day of playing because I said, this is going to make my combo scoring easier because it means I don't have to think as hard for my lines, because Red Level Clearance has the mode where you can click, install a non-agenda card, and then gain a click back. So it effectively becomes a 1-cost, 0-click install a card from hand. That card will almost always be Reconstruction Contract. So now we've got the Reconstruction Contract on the board clicklessly, and we can play Dedication Ceremony, and then Dedication Ceremony, and then we have 1 click left to install our agenda and score it, which is great. If we have Jeeves on the board, we actually have a whole extra click. So sometimes what you would do with this deck is play your red level clearance, play 2 dedication ceremonies, install the Vitruvius, advance the Vitruvius, and then score everything, and now you get a 4 counter Vitruvius. This deck was a ton of fun to play, and so I was playing it a bunch at every single casual meetup night I could, against a couple of really try-hard players, and was having a good time and getting pretty good results. And so I said, well, going to PAX Unplugged, it was the first year where that was a major Netrunner event, and I thought I would bring it. I also then I was a hardcore Haley player, and this is I will very quickly show, this is the other deck on stream that I would think about playing. But for some reason, I sort of had this impression that Haley was no good at the time, and I should instead play a good deck that everyone else is running, which is Amakua Val, which no one else at the event was running. They were mostly playing APOC Val and Freedom, but you know what? You win some, you lose some. So I think I went something like 50-50 with Val. I dropped 1 game in Swiss against my opponent, Slate. We then had so much time on the round because I just got completely obliterated in our matchup that we played the matchup a second time, and I just ran over the deck. Well, maybe not run over. It was an APOC deck. It was a really interesting matchup. This came back to bite me in the Swiss, where instead of getting to play my corp against her, she said, oh no, let's play the Argus versus Val matchup, a matchup that required a lot of practice that I had not done, and so I got smoked. But PAX Unplugged was a ton of fun, and this is the first time I made an event of any significant size, like a non-just local event, and made the cut in it, and that was super good. And it's a memory I remember very fondly. And I kept playing this deck for a whole year, even when Efficiency Committee rotated, and after Violet level clearance got banned, and managed to actually convince some other really good players that this deck was still worth trying even then. So I think this is a really cool deck. Looking at it now, there's a bunch of changes I would love to try and make. It feels like the Ice Suite's not quite right. I think there's maybe too many biotic labors. But also the other thing I discovered when playing this list against Koga, or not Koga, the thing I discovered or rediscovered when playing this list is, oh my goodness, playing Netrunner without Spin Doctor is an entirely different game. And I think it's super interesting that part of the reason this deck is good is because it can play Cybernetics Court to help manage its flood. And so we're going to see in some games I do that successfully, in some games I don't. Without much further ado, I want to go show those replays so you can see the deck in action and see kind of how weird and broken Netrunner can be. I'm going to go backwards because we get to see I got better at piloting the deck and ended up getting some wins. Okay. So I'm going to kind of go through pretty quickly, but the idea often was I want to get some early gas. This hand has no early gas, so it honestly arguably shouldn't have been a keep, but getting a single vanilla is really nice. It's kind of, vanilla looks like a pretty innocuous card, but the 0 to res cost, make your opponent find an icebreaker, was a really significant thing to do. The first red level clearance each game in my write-up says, oh, this is a bad green level clearance because it just gains you 1 credit and nets you +2 cards, which is still okay. We want to be drawing a lot so that we can build a board state, and that's exactly what I do here. And then I go and put down some cards, the Cybernetics Court. I've got multiple, and then we're just going to ice up HQ just to keep stuff safe. Runner is going to Omar right away, which is often a real danger sign for us. Omar turn 1 is a very reasonable play back in this Rebirth day because, just for a second, Val no longer has relevant game text, and there isn't really a better Anarch to become. People will try and tell you there are better Anarchs to be. 95+% of the time, Omar is the correct choice, and it certainly is in this matchup. Ed Kim is arguably a choice you can make, but I think you ended up losing a lot of equity in actually trying to find the events over Omar, who just could get you the agendas directly instead. Because I think one of the interesting things about this list is it actually is totally capable of scoring, as we see here. And I think this is the thing that I had forgotten about this list, is it really can just play an efficiency game that just has a very, very safe and reliable end game. So the idea here is I just want to get this efficiency committee scored quickly. It's very notable that I go down to 0 credits here. I can pretty much only do this because of Fully Operational and Rashida Jaheim and Vanilla. So it's like there's this suite of cards that a couple of them have gone out of the game that make a huge deal. I get to protect a lot of stuff because I drew my 2 vanillas really early. And so that ends up making a huge impact. Here's a console that many of you may not have seen. This is Turntable. This is whenever you steal an agenda, you may swap that agenda with an agenda in the corpse score area. I went back and checked. In the top 8, most people were not running that console in Anarch at all. You just played 3 breakers, and that was the end of the list. I was the only person who brought Turntable because I wanted to beat my own deck. A couple people were also running Knobkery Freedom, but by and large, the no console choice was correct. Turntable makes it much harder because this whole deck, as I talked about, depends a lot on cards that get counters that you can use later. For example, Efficiency Committee, which gets 3 counters and gives me clicks to score. And here we go. I lose these Efficiency Committee counters immediately, and that makes my game much more challenging. That said, I draw very, very well off Rashida. And in fact, I draw the second Rashida. This is Violet Level Clearance. This card is banned in Standard because it turns out gaining 3 credits and drawing 4 cards on a 5 credit operation that costs 1 to trash is really, really good. Even though this often means you have to discard a card, it is really, really good. And it got banned shortly after the release of Gateway to slow down precision design. Next up, I play Fully Up. This turn is actually like kind of, I think the thing that was the most fun about this deck was just how much tempo you could gain so fast. So I fire Rashida, install a Vitruvius, then fire a Fully Operational, getting 4 triggers off this Fully Operational. I draw 2 cards, gain 6 credits, so net +5. And then I think I'm going to last click. So you have to res the Cybernetics Court before you can play the Violet Level Clearance, at least at the rule at the time, from what I remember. And so now I have drawn this turn. I went from having, remember, 0 credits at the start of the turn to having 11 credits. I have drawn 4 + 3 + 1. I've drawn 8 cards and made 11 credits and installed an agenda and a piece of ice. I mean, I can't argue that that's a terribly healthy turn to have a lot, but it was a really, really fun thing to do as the Corp. We also see I've drawn 2 of my combo pieces and a red level clearance, so I have a lot of combo options available to me. My opponent's going to Omar. This is a thing we discussed at the time. I think in retrospect, this mining accident play was incorrect. The economy at this point, like, we're already in the late game for this deck, and it's turn 5. It's a little bit hard to see. Maybe I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Apologies for the small cards. I will try and do hovers of things as I talk about them. I'm already halfway through R&D, and it's turn 5. And the runner has Pad Tap, which is going to trigger every single turn, and they have Mystic Mamie, the 1 card from Uprising that was in the booster that could be legally played at the time. So it's a little bit maybe they didn't need to actually install it. Here, I go for a kind of greedy line of just going player red level clearance, dedication ceremony, archive memories, dedication ceremony. This is in fact a pretty bad play overall. I think going advance the Vitruvius, like, and just saving the dedication ceremony, I think would be totally fine, because then I could do this exact same play. Well, not quite the exact same play, but I could do a very similar play the following turn. I would have lots of options, but getting 3 Vitruvius counters is really good. It does mean that we probably will have a way to score. We can draw a piece. The other option, as I look at this board in retrospect, would be to actually, instead of is just advancing once and then scoring the Vitruvius with a single counter and then playing another violet level clearance just to keep drawing. The tricky thing about this iteration of the deck is it is playing only one dedication it's playing only 2 dedication ceremonies and only 1 reconstruction contract. And again, we don't have Spin Doctor to recur our pieces, so archive memories and Vitruvius counters are the only way we're recurring our pieces. My opponent goes and does Omar, and because I have 2 agendas in hand, I actually have to use my Vitruvius counters right away so as to not risk them getting turntabled. Because whatever agenda they steal, they can turntable for my Vitruvius with a counter. However, I am not grabbing the reconstruction contract because I don't want that to get trashed. I would rather risk not getting the Vitruvius counter. And then when they go for the blind run on R&D, I say, okay, now my HQ is safe because Omar has a once per turn limit. So now I can grab my reconstruction contract so that if they top deck an agenda, I don't lose it. And they do in fact spend some credits off, or some power counters off a turning wheel. If you haven't seen the video discussion about rotation, this card was such an important card in the standard meta for years. It's definitely worth checking, and you can hear us go on for a long time about it. So I am here and trying to remember if I have any combo with this hand of cards. I'm pretty sure the answer is actually no. So I draw and I find the combo piece. This is pretty unlikely. There's 18 cards left in R&D. It is turn 7. So by turn 7, I've seen 31 cards, which is pretty ridiculous. And I haven't even had to draw that much with fully operational, but I've drawn into the full combo, and that's the game. So that's the idea, is that while this deck can do a 5-point combo, it's really, really fast and just beats a lot of runners' ability to get through their stack. And Val was, in particular, more exploitable because they had a 50-card deck. I'm going to quickly show one other win, and then I'm going to pull up one of my losses. So this was more of a hard-fought battle. I started with no ice, which happened a decent amount of time. I happen to be lucky to also start with no agendas, which is definitely good. My opponent stim hacks early to hit a cybernetics court. This was one of the cards I think that was one of the most challenging ones for runners to figure out when to trash. And this is not a mark on tuno at all. This was a play that I think many people were playing around, because the value of this trash is it very, very dependent on how many cards the corp has drawn and discarded. But it's also something where if you just let this sit on the table, it has a lot of downside. So it was a really tricky card, and it's funny that this basically sat unused for years. And it was really, I'm going to say, like fully operational that really brought it into the limelight. And then someone in the comments can correct me and say, no, it was years before that. It was also the rotation of cerebral imaging that also helped it see some play. So I read the Jeeves here and intend to go draw, but I don't find what I need. So instead I just say I really need to protect, like getting a Rashida off is a huge deal. I discard the Cyberdex Virus Suite. Cyberdeck's Virus Suite was used for two things. Primarily, it was used to beat Clot. The other thing it was used to do was to purge Amakuas. I am going to regret getting rid of the Cyberdeck's Virus Suite in this game, if I recall correctly. This, unlike the last mining accident, I think is a very good use of mining accident. It's turn 2. The runner is going to make a lot of money with 2 bad pub. They basically don't need to play most of their other econ cards after they've paid for install costs. But I get a Rashida and I draw another Rashida. Statistically, I'm pretty likely to draw either a Rashida or a Violet level clearance, which is part of why this deck is deeply unfair. And I'm just going to spam out assets and get Jeeves to let me take a 4th click this turn. I think Jeeves was like maybe one of my all-time favorite cards for just how much it enabled, and it was, you know, I think it's a... I hope someday we can see something that does what Jeeves did for giving asset-based strategies to go a long way. Runner with the 2 bad pub can go around trashing all of my stuff. I haven't talked about Executive Boot Camp. This was primarily a way to get additional copies of Reconstruction Contract into your deck for only 1 influence, because you could install this and then clicklessly go and grab it when you needed to. But situationally, it could also grab you your Cybernetic Escort and your Jeeves. So we fire Rashida. Spend my... Is this my second RLC? It is my second RLC to draw in tempo, and I think it ends up hurting me this game that I did that. I think I'm showing these backwards. I get better at playing the deck as we go. I play a Violet level clearance, and then we're just going to discard some cards. I think this fully op discard in retrospect is just completely wrong. I think there's... Honestly, this extra Cybernetics Court is a totally fine discard because I can dump a lot of cards from my hand next turn if I need to. Because I have a Jeeves and a GFI on the board. I should be okay to actually give some pressure, especially with the runner sitting on such low credits. The fully operational is a good way to keep accelerating my game plan. However, I do the other play that this deck does a lot, and I don't actually love this based on how this comes out, but I play Biotic Labor, and then I get to install... oh no, I decide not to do it because I think it's really bad. And so here we see I draw fully operational and play it, and go, oh, I probably should have just kept the last one. And then just keep building, and now I do actually get rid of the Cybernetics Court. And then what I do is I install the Efficiency Committee behind a piece of ice, because with Jeeves out, I can fully advance the Efficiency Committee. The line I was going to go, but I don't think I end up showing in any of these games, is playing Biotic Labor, which normally gives you 4 clicks so that you can score a 3-2. If you combine that with Jeeves, Jeeves gives you a click after you've advanced that agenda 3 times, so you get a 4th click. So you can actually score the Efficiency Committee from hand, and then use the Efficiency Committee to score out a full combo in one go. But instead, I just score the Efficiency Committee off the board, discard a Project Vitruvius, and I think immediately get punished. No, I don't immediately get punished. That's great. This is the last meta where Architect was playable. We got Drafter, and I think, honestly, this deck would probably prefer Drafter over Architect, which is kind of wild. Because I think Drafter is a fairly fair card. Architect has at many times been the strongest thing you could play. But I think the slightly different bit of recursion is really helpful for this deck. And once again, we're going to Violet level clearance. So we've played, I think we've gotten off 2 Rashidas and 2 VLCs. You'll notice R&D has 14 cards in it on turn 7. So once again, we are blitzing through our deck. We still have not found a Reconstruction Contract. We are going to use some agendas here. And yeah, I play my RLC in a very silly fashion here. And then I just go and get a fully operational. Because having an RLC, there's a combo I never end up using this entire game. What did I install here? Oh, a Lakshmi Smart Fabrics. This is a card I haven't talked about. This was a 1 of in my list. It probably could have been a 2 of. It's a really nice low econ non-combo option against things like 419 and other and Leela, where this card let you put an agenda on the board and be confident that it wasn't going to get stolen. So this is the other unfair thing you could kind of do. I should very quickly mention Hacktivist Meeting. This is a current. Currents are all banned in Standard, so you may have not seen these, but this just says, as an additional cost to res non-ice cards, the court must randomly trash a card from HQ. This is really bad for us because we have a combo deck where we have to res our asset as the first part of our combo. So we can install the agenda, install our reconstruction contract, but then we have to res the reconstruction contract to play the dedication ceremonies, which means we can lose the dedication ceremony we were about to play, which is quite bad. But I'm just going to try and luck sack it, and I do. And here I actually get to do the full combo turn. Yes, I do. Okay. Yes. So this is not the ideal combo turn. In the ideal combo turn, I've saved a red level clearance, but here we get to go and see it. So I start my turn, I install my agenda, I install a reconstruction contract, I res the reconstruction contract, and then I go and score the Vitruvius with 3 counters. Because of the Jeeves click and the actually no, I haven't gotten my Jeeves click yet. Oh no, I have. Okay, yes. So because of the Jeeves click, I have 3 clicks remaining after scoring a 6-2, basically. So I can recur all my pieces. I could, if I didn't have a GFI already on the table, I could play Biotic Labor and then go install the reconstruction contract. I would play the Biotic Labor to go back up to 4 clicks, play the reconstruction contract on the table, play 2 dedication ceremonies, and then install the GFI to score it. Because I have this GFI sitting on the table the entire game, I save myself 4 credits, and I do this. The reason that I was playing red level clearances in this deck is because red level clearance in this board state would be a 1 credit Biotic Labor, and you'll note that 3 credit saving is almost as much money as you would get from a hedge fund, and which is why I actually ended up cutting the hedge funds, because they were the only slot I felt like I could reasonably cut. And the deck did pretty well for me. It is a very strong deck, and I think it's maybe one of the few cases where you can cut hedge fund because you have Rashida Jaheim, Violet level clearance, and a lot of very good less than 4 cost ice that you can use to antagonize the runner. I could go on and on about all the different pieces of this deck because I played it so much and spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think there was definitely improvements on later versions that I wish I could have done at the time. But this deck was, I think, it's still one of my favorite decks to play. I found a way to play it both in ASA and in Cerebral Imaging in Eternal, and it's a lot of fun. I should quickly, because I do owe Tuno that they did beat me 3 times. I should probably show one of those on camera just so you all can see. Okay. So let's see. We fire off a Rashida. Trying to get some early Amakua, trashes our Rashida, and we have to Biotic Labor to score a efficiency committee off the board, which is pretty rough. Runner plays 2 mining accidents and is still at 6 credits with 8 more credits sitting on the table, so they are going to be fine for the whole game on Econ. I click for credits and install behind. The runner hard installs a paperclip, and the reason they do this is because of Hagen, which is a card I just stopped myself from going on for too long about. But Hagen was one of the key pieces for keeping Amakua down, and my opponent has played around it expertly, and so they are going to rip me apart this game. And so I just sort of lack tempo, I lack any pieces, and get completely run over. And my opponent is definitely playing well here. It's not just like I'm getting unlucky. as much as I love to say stuff like that. Okay. I'm just the interesting thing about one of the interesting things is that vanilla becomes really bad once Amakuwa is on the table because it's just a blank piece of ice. And then my opponent gets an early Stargate. So we got pretty wrecked because in the top 17 cards, our opponent found all of the pieces they needed to beat us. And it's not that hard to make a deck that does really well against this. And that's sort of how this game went. I don't quite stay up on money. I don't manage to protect anything. And I get to a winning state, I think, sort of. But my opponent gets an efficiency committee before I can get in. And you'll note, once again, I have 7 cards in R&D on turn 9 after 2 Stargate hits. I just drew a ton, and this deck was doing that consistently. If we look back at all 3 games, the longest one, I think we have 7 turns, 9 turns, 6 turns, 9 turns, and 10 turns. So this deck was probably too fast to be healthy, but I'll be honest, that's part of why I loved it. So anyway, I also should do some, people ask me some questions, so I should answer some of those questions. Okay. Someone asked what the source of my name was, and that is, long story short, is from a webcomic, Gunnar Craig Court. And then there's a character in that called Yazendrin, who is often made a fool of, which is a big part of how I view it. He's also a cool wolf, so like, you know, why would you turn that down, especially when you're like 14? And then the SC is for StarCraft, because I was a big StarCraft Brood War player and then StarCraft 2 player in high school. What's my favorite ID? It's got to be hands down Haley. Just such a fun thing. And then someone asked if we're going to see more Eternal content, and almost certainly yes. There's a couple other questions in here, but I think I'm going to leave it for those for later. Actually, no. There was one question that's, what are you most looking forward to for Netrunner in 2023? I am really excited to see how people play with the different tools in the Borealis cycle. I think it's trying to take the game in a very different direction. And while that direction may not be for everyone, I don't think it's the like long-term permanent direction necessarily. But I think it's really interesting to see strong non-reg tools being given such prominence on both sides of the table. And I've been having a lot of fun with playing the set so far, and I hope you all do too. And I'm hoping to make it out to several more events in person this year, as it looks like, you know, COVID rates are stabilizing fairly low as opposed to spiking as high as they did last year. So I don't know. There's a lot to look forward to in Netrunner this upcoming year, and I'm excited to do it all with you. And I'm going to try and get a video up every other week. Some of them will probably be shorter, and they'll be more like replay reviews style things. So once again, I'll put out the call. If you have replays of games where you want to go, hey, can we talk about it? I thought this thing was interesting. Or do you think I did the right thing here? I'd love to do more of that content. And that's probably what I'm going back to. Trying to do a bit more, along with trying to get guests on to talk about things. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks everyone for subscribing. It means a lot. It really... Oh yeah, someone did ask, what aspects of making content do you enjoy the most? And genuinely, it is people saying, this was useful for me. I really enjoyed this. You know, there's a lot of... Often I feel like I'm just kind of parroting other smarter people's common sense things, and that is mostly what I'm doing. But if I'm able to help people enjoy Netrunner more or get better at playing Netrunner, that means a lot. So yeah, thank you all for giving me encouragement along the way, and thank you, and thanks for watching, and like and subscribe.